is with you.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
Stan.
Marcia.
Hope you're feeling better.
I had to touch his stomach something last night,
Hey.
and Ethel was away, and I could not. I didn't get very much sleep over the last few nights.
All right. Well, I hope you feel better.
Well, me too. So we got
All right. So, Parashat Tetzaveh, and find it in the Chumash.
page 503.
503. Wow. What do you know?
Does that mean you're surprised that I knew the page?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, certainly not. All right. So, confession is good for the soul. So I'm going to begin with a confession. In that I had a great. For some reason I'm getting a lot of like static.
I'm probably too loud.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Say something else.
Hi.
A little better.
Is that Barnaby?
No, it's Stan. 503.
Now I can't hear you at all.
What you need to do is not turn your volume down, but mute it. You know what? I will mute you, and if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. Oh, hold on a second.
Okay, how about you? You're going on vacation soon again.
Tomorrow, not tomorrow, Saturday. Yeah. And so everything happens. It never fails that right before we're going away, the house falls apart.
All right.
Real estate makes demands.
I can't figure out how to mute you, but you can mute yourself, I think. There's a little icon that looks like a microphone,
Yeah.
lower left. And if you hit that, there you're muted.
Am I
Okay.
in the Rashi class?
You're in the Rashi class.
Oh, goodness.
Right. The theology class is next week.
Oh, goodness. Okay, but I'm
Okay.
here, so.
All right. But you're here.
You might learn something.
Well,
You might.
I came
You
once,
came-
and I found it, I don't want to say distasteful. That would be disrespectful to Mr. Rashi, but sufficiently maybe just out of the box that I decided it wasn't my cup of
All right.
tea.
It's very out of the box. I mean, this is actually tonight somewhat less out of the box. But what I started by saying is that I had a lot of trouble preparing this class this week. And the reason is simply, I'll have to be very honest, is that the material doesn't interest me that much.
Well, this is the boring stuff about
Right.
the
Right.
building of the
Right.
the garments.
Right.
And building of the,
right.
Yeah.
This is mostly the stuff about the construction of the priestly garments.
Yeah.
Okay, and
You really will maintain, despite this problem that you have for very good reasons, that this is what God told Moses in this kind of detail, as opposed to the priests using the opportunity to lay down their requirements and their rules and all the details that they care about that take up so much space in the Torah.
that's actually a misunderstanding of what I say. Okay, I don't actually say that God revealed this to Moses at Mount Sinai. I say the tradition tells us that God revealed this to Moses
Sure.
at Mount
Yeah,
Sinai.
Sure.
That's an important difference.
And that therefore it is as much part of the Torah as any other part of the
Without
Torah.
question.
That doesn't mean that I find it equally interesting as other parts, nor frankly equally relevant in the sense that, look, one of the differences, like clear liturgical differences between conservative and Orthodox Judaism, is that the Orthodox Sidurim pray for the rebuilding of the temple and the reinstitution of the sacrificial rites.
Exactly, so that we can do that.
Right. Our Sidurim pray for the restoration of the temple, but not of the sacrificial rites.
So that, it doesn't say so that.
No, it is where our ancestors.
Our forefathers.
And current editions of the Sidurim, of conservative Sidurim, even provide you with an option to not pray for the rebuilding of the temple.
Especially, there are certain paragraphs where they don't.
Right, where it says some congregations omit,
right,
or for an alternative version, da 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 da.
Yes.
So that regardless of whether you are Orthodox or conservative, these sections have little to no contemporary relevance.
I mean, but
right? I mean, they may have contemporary relevance in the future, but they don't have contemporary relevance.
But they do
at the moment.
But they do because in the absence of the temple, we don't do what the Psalms tell us to do. We don't use the lyre and the harp and the trumpet and the cymbals and instead we have a tradition of a cappella for 2,500
right.
years because we're still in mourning for the temple. But if the temple were rebuilt,
bingo,
or if the Sanhedrin were reconstituted, or if the conservative movement took a leap of non-faith.
Right, but the point that I'm making is that, look, there are certain questions that I have gotten frequently over the 34 years of my rabbinate, like about mourning customs and about naming children. Okay, there are other questions that I have gotten less frequently, but still gotten, like questions about kashrut or questions about is this or that or the other thing considered a violation of Shabbat, etc. Okay, no one has ever come to me and say, I am making garments for the high priest, and I'm not sure exactly how to do it, okay? That's what I mean when it doesn't have contemporary relevance. Now, I will tell you that you can go to the old city of Jerusalem and go to the Temple Institute, okay? And you can see they have a full set of all the accoutrements of the temple ready to go. Okay, so that when Mashiach comes and dynamites Al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock and rebuilds the temple, we're ready to go. Okay, so it just doesn't interest me that much. And I could pretend it does and I could lie, but it just doesn't. Okay, so therefore, it was hard for me to prepare because it didn't interest me that much, and it's hard to follow. I mean, it is hard to follow because some of the vocabulary is very specialized, just like it was last week, right? And it's not stuff that comes up very much in in modern Hebrew. Okay, but we have a little bit. Okay. V'ata tetzaveh et b'nei Israel, you shall command the Israelites by yiku elecha shemen zayit zach katit. They shall take to you pure olive oil crushed, katit lameor, crushed for the lighting, laha'alot ner tamid. Okay, it says to kindle the lamps continually. Eitz Chaim, how is it translated? For kindling lamps regularly. Okay, so the first question is, right, we have what seems to be, and again, shemen zayit zach, right, pure olive oil, katit lamaor. Katit lamaor, crushed, or you see, and if you look closely, there are differences between the translations, because the translation from the Chumash with Rashi text seems to say zach and katit are two different things, whereas Eitz Chaim translates shemen zach katit as one phrase. Okay, so the point is, zach is a fairly common word. Okay, even in modern Hebrew, zach is a fairly common word, and it means pure. Right? The question is, what does katit mean? Okay, so Rashi is going to explain both zach and katit. Okay, zach, pure, bli shemarim, without settlements. Not settlements. Without sediment. Good Lord, without settlements. I'm in trouble now. As we learned in Menachot, he allows it to ripen at the top of the olive tree, etc. Okay, so pure means without sediment. It doesn't have any bits of olive in it. Okay, right? No solid material.
And this reference to Men 86a.
Menachot.
What's that?
It's another tractate of the Talmud. Menachot means grain offerings.
And how many tractates are there? A lot of them.
Endless.
Endless.
Yeah. I don't. To be honest, I don't even.
It's not like one book per tractate.
No. I mean, the Steinsaltz, it depends on the tractate, right? But Psachim, for example, is 10 books, 10 volumes, right? No. And even, in a standard Vilna edition of the Shas, you could have more than one tractate in a volume, but you will never have a tractate extending over more than one volume. Okay, but so that's menachot, and menachot means literally grain offerings. The word mincha, the plural of mincha is menachot, and the mincha which we use for the afternoon service literally means a grain offering. Okay, so according to Rashi, zach means without solid material. Okay, and katit means crushed. He must crush the olives in a mortar, but he may not grind them in a mill, so that they will not contain sediment. Okay, what's the difference between olive oil that's crushed in a mortar and ground in a mill?
So in a mortar, you take a pestle and you beat up the olive, and you end up with juice and sediment.
You end up with juice and sediment, but it's easier to strain.
Yeah, because it's a small amount.
It's a small amount of oil, but also
you're using also a smaller amount of material, and the
right, because
it's larger.
That's the point. The point is that the solid material, the pieces of olive, whether of olive meat or olive pits, will be larger. You can strain it, right? I mean, as somebody who uses a mortar and pestle fairly frequently, albeit not for olive oil, but for guacamole. So it seems to me relatively easy to put olives in, mash them up. You've got olive oil, you can strain out the olive oil, and it will be free of sediment, free of
and that actually would burn. I would.
Sure, that would burn.
Yeah, sure would burn. The oil would burn.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, have you ever? I mean, we sometimes
you have a Hanukkah menorah that takes oil.
That takes olive oil.
And
yeah,
it's olive oil.
It's olive oil.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, and it definitely burns. Yeah.
So how did we make? Can I interrupt you?
Yeah,
one
please.
minute? So how did we make the transition from the obvious commandment to use olive oil for the Ner Tamid and buy into electricity? And the Orthodox do it also, I think.
All right. No. All right. So you leapt over one step. Nobody that I am aware of maintains that using an electric menorah fulfills the obligation to light the menorah.
I'm not talking about Hanukkah. I'm talking about the Ner Tamid. I'm sorry.
Oh, because this is not a temple. It's a zecher. It's a remembrance of. It's a remembrance of.
And we're careful not to mimic what got done in the temple. For example, we don't eat lamb at the Seder because we're not sacrificing.
Right, unless you're Sephardic. I mean, now you have accidentally landed on one of my hobby horses when I'm arguing for the inconsistency of our minhagic practices, right? Is that there are certain things that we do not do because they did them in the temple, and there are certain things that we do because they did them in the temple.
Exactly.
Right? So there's no, but, all right, we call it a ner tamid, in fact, and we'll get to what the word tamid actually means too. Okay, but we're not fulfilling that mitzvah because it's not a temple. Okay, now I thought you were asking about right,
Hanukkah, no.
right, Hanukkah. Now, but you could have asked the question.
Why not?
Well, no, you could have asked the question. Well, why not is a legitimate question too, because if you maintain that it's forbidden to use electricity on Shabbat because electricity is fire, then you should be able to use electric candles for Shabbos candles and for Hanukkah candles.
Before Shabbos.
Because it's fire.
And for Hanukkah, it's
right.
a question because you're allowed
right,
to
you
have
should,
fire,
but I'm not aware. But no, but when I say you skipped a step, is why not ask how did we get from olive oil to candles?
Oh, that's another story.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I will tell you, that there are people who maintain that you actually do not fulfill your obligation with candles. It must be olive oil.
This is for
for Hanukkah.
For Hanukkah.
For Hanukkah. Not for Shabbos. Not for Shabbos. Having said that, and people who know more about this than I do can give you like more examples, okay? But when you compare the Mishnah to the Bavli, right? The Bavli is the Babylonian Talmud, and that's the authoritative Talmud, right? There's also the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, which is not authoritative, okay? But when you compare the Mishnah or the Yerushalmi to the Bavli, and you know enough about economics and material culture, you will see cases where differences of law reflect differences of geography. As an example, and this one I mean I know from my own studies, right? You will see many cases where the Mishnah says you must use wine. And then the Bavli will come along and say, wine or beer or any other local beverage. Now, why would the Mishnah say wine? And then the Bavli says, it could be beer, could be something else, doesn't have to be wine.
I know.
Gail, you know.
Yeah, it's because they grew grapes in Israel, but they didn't grow grapes in Baghdad.
Correct.
Okay, so what?
They grow grapes in Israel. They don't grow grapes in Mesopotamia,
Yeah.
right? Eretz Yisrael is Mediterranean. It's a grape-growing region.
Yeah.
Wine is plentiful. Bavel, Mesopotamia, Iraq, whatever you want to call it, they grow grain, not grapes, and therefore wine is expensive and difficult to get. Okay, it's kind of like Purell these days. Right?
So one of the stupidest questions, stupider questions that I asked once of Rabbi Raphael is, do we have to use Monashevitz sweet wine to make Kiddush at the Seder? You know, 4 glasses of that stuff is. And he said, do you really think that Monashevitz was around at the start of this process?
Right.
It says wine. You're
Right.
welcome to use any dry, well, but I mean,
kosher wine.
he would say kosher wine.
Kosher wine for the Seder for
the
sure.
Seder, yeah.
Right. But
So
so
it's not only geography, it's culture.
geography and culture, sure.
So
Right, but. I mean, why is Monashevitz? It's not only Monashevitz, it's also Mogen David, right? But that sweet. Why is that the stereotypical American kosher wine? There's also history and geography there, because the first significant Jewish settlement in this country was in New York. In New York, at the time, the only wine growing grapes were Concord grapes, which are actually extremely bitter. And in order to make it palatable, you must add tons of sugar. Okay, so that's why. So it's also, culture, in that sense, culture is also shaped by geography, right? I mean, you with your background in economics would find this fascinating. I mean, because you can see, and so, again, so it's easy for the Mishnah to say olive oil, olive oil, olive oil, olive oil, which is fine if you live in Eretz Yisrael, not too bad if you live in Athens, not too bad if you live in Rome. Okay, by the time you're in Russia or Poland,
Northern climes,
olive oil is hard to get and expensive. So, right. So, right. Okay. So, anyway, so you crush them in a mill so that they will not contain. You crush them in a mortar. You may not grind them in a mill. After you have extracted the first drops of oil, you place them into a mill and grind them. The resulting second oil is unfit for the menorah, but is fit for meal offerings. As it is said, katit la meor, crushed for the light, and it doesn't say katit le minachot, right, for the meal offerings. Okay, so the meal offerings were also made with olive oil. Okay, but it didn't have to be extra virgin.
Yeah.
Right? It could be the cheaper stuff.
And isn't that interesting that they had that distinction going back all the way then?
Sure.
Because it's like Eskimos have 100 words for snow.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, so there also, look, I mean, there's a phrase in the Talmud, Hasin al mamonam shel Yisrael. Okay. God takes pity on the wealth of Israel, right? In other words, God doesn't want to make the mitzvot so expensive that it's like literally a burden to do them.
Except for the building of the temple.
All right, but the building of the temple is not incumbent upon each individual Jew.
Right,
It's incumbent on
whoever wanted to.
Right. First of all, it was voluntary, right? Kol asher yidvenu libo, whoever's heart moved him. But it was the community of Israel, right? It wasn't each individual. I mean, if you look at why Techelet fell out of usage, right? The actual blue thread in the Talit is because, I mean, I know I've spoken about this, but it's been a while, right? Talit was a Roman royal Talit. Techelet was a Roman royal monopoly. And so Techelet became so expensive, right? And so the choice that Jews faced is either to buy exorbitantly expensive Techelet or make it surreptitiously and risk arrest. Okay? And so the rabbis said, Hasina mamonam shel Yisrael, right? That God doesn't demand that you spend, a mortgage payment to buy Techelet for your talis, and God doesn't want you to risk arrest and torture to clandestinely manufacture Techelet, so we won't use it. And that was fine. I mean, there's history here, right? So anyway, okay. So, laha'alot ner tamid. All right, so laha'alot, the issue with laha'alot, and again, you don't even have to know a lot of Hebrew to see this, right? We translate it as to kindle the lamps continually, right? But what does laha'alot literally mean?
This thing says it means to rise like Aliyah. Right,
it is. It's the same shorish, the same root as aliyah. Aliyah is ascent, right? And the hay is causative. It's a he feel. Okay, so the hay is cause. So laha'alot means to cause to rise. Okay, to make it rise. So
that's where you get lahadlik ner, that hay is causative.
Right, the hay is causative. Dolek means to burn or to glow. But right, lahadlik, right? I mean, there's lots of, and now that you know that the hay is causative, right? Like the. I mean, not that you've been to so many brisses, but the bracha that the Father says is Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvotav vitzivanu lahachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu, to cause him to enter into the covenant of Avraham Avinu. Right? The hay, it's causative. The conjugation is known as a he feel.
Interesting.
Okay. And once that's why Hebrew is such a fun language, right? Because like If I want to dictate something, it's lahachtiv, to cause to be written.
Mhm.
Right? Anyway, so the Kohen shall light it until the flame rises by itself. Tamid, continually. Okay, now we think continually means
24/7.
24/7,
Yeah.
right? Perpetual motion. Not so, says Rashi. Since it burns every night, it is called tamid. As you say, a continual burnt offering, olat tamid. Although it is offered up only from day to day. Similarly, concerning the flat pan meal offering of the Kohen Gadol, tamid is mentioned, although it is offered up only half in the morning and half in the evening. The word tamid mentioned concerning the showbread, lechem panim, however, literally means from Sabbath to Sabbath, continually. In other words, Rashi is saying that there are some places where tamid literally means 24/7, right? Like the lechem panim, the bread on the altar was there 24/7. Okay, I think it was changed on Shabbat, right? But you put the lechem panim on the altar, it sat there until it was taken away and replaced with other lechem panim.
So folks got to eat the sacrifices, but not the showbread.
Right.
Cool.
Right. But tamid doesn't have to mean 24/7. It just means regularly, every day. Okay, so that the lamp in the temple, which we call ner tamid, it wasn't lit 24/7. Okay, it was only lit every day. Okay, and that is called tamid. Okay, which, I mean, it's interesting. It gets back because people sometimes, and it's well-meaning, focus on stuff that is very peripheral to the central concerns of Judaism, right? I mean, it's like, people go nuts about covering mirrors during Shiva, which, I mean, certainly it's strong minhag, but there are other things in life that are more important, right? But I often get the question, mostly from like kids, Rabbi, what would happen? Because they know that it's a light bulb. What happens if the light bulb burns out? Nothing happens, right? When we notice it, we'll change it, right? I mean, because first of all, tamid obviously doesn't mean 24/7 around the clock. But beyond that, like I say, it's a remembrance. It's not the fulfillment of the actual mitzvah, right? So
ecologically speaking, it would be acceptable to wire it so that when we turn the lights on in the room, it goes on.
Right, or to be on a timer. I mean, the optimum, and there are shuls that have this, is a solar-powered ner tamid. Right. I mean, that's with a solar battery storage system, just like if we had solar panels on the roof. Okay. All right. So 28:3. Next, you shall instruct all who are skillful, whom I have endowed with the gift of skill, to make Aaron's vestments for consecrating him to serve me as a priest. They shall make Aaron's garment to sanctify him, that he may serve me as a Kohen. Okay, the Hebrew is, right, Va'asu et bigdei Aharon, they shall make the clothing, the garments of Aaron, likadsho, to sanctify him or to make him holy, right, kodesh. Licha ha-no li, right, kohen, right, to kohenify him
Right.
for me, right, to make him
As a Kohen to me. Yeah.
right. So there's a lot of stuff here, right? What does it mean lekadsho, right? And what does it mean lehahano? And what does it mean li? Right? Lekadsho lahachniso. Hey, causative hey, he feel, right? To cause him to enter bakahuna, to cause him to enter into the priesthood, the kahuna, al yadei habeganim sheyihe kohen li, right? To cause him to enter the priesthood by means of the garments, that he may be a priest to me. Ulashon kehuna sherutu. The phrase kehuna implies service. And then he translates it into Old French. And they're not sure because, I mean, I guess you have to know both Old French and how Rashi transliterated things. Sargenterie or serventerie in Old French. It could be either, right? Mm-hmm. Because sergeant is also like a service, right? So what?
French or in English?
Well, in both.
I don't know French.
Well, neither do I.
I'd be surprised.
Why?
Yeah, but there's a lot of French in English. Because,
right, especially
because of the Norman Conquest.
Especially in military terms, right? Lieutenant.
That's right.
Right, lieutenant is pure French. I mean, I don't know French, but I know enough French. Lieutenant, holder of the place.
Okay.
Right?
Cool.
Okay. So now we're going to go look at, and I don't necessarily want to read through this whole Rashi. All right? And they shall make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and crimson wool and twisted fine linen, the work of a master weaver. I just want to look, because I will tell you, I mean, I prepared this class more than I normally prepare because it was hard for me to understand it. And how can you teach it if you don't understand it, right? But I couldn't make heads or tails. Okay, but I want to just look at the beginning of the Rashi because I think methodologically it's interesting. Va'asu et ha'ephod, they shall make the ephod. Im bati lefaresh ma'aseh ha'ephod va'choshen al seder ha'mikraot. If I would try to explain the making of the ephod and the choshen al seder ha'mikraot in the order in which it's explained in the verses, hare perushan perakim, their explanation would be fragmentary, bit by bit. Vayishke hakore b'tzirufan. The reader would err in combining them. L'chach ani kotev ma'aseim kamot shehu. L'man yerut hakore bo v'hakech afrosh al seder mikraot. Therefore, I am writing first how they were made, so that the reader can read it quickly, and afterwards I'll go back and explain them verse by verse. Right? In other words, Rashi is here acknowledging, right, that
he has the same problem you do.
He has the same problem as I do. Right? So he's he's not going to explain it verse by verse. He's going to give you the overview of how the priestly garments were made, and then he'll go back and explain verse by verse, word by word. All right. I mean, this is what's beautiful about. This is one of the things that makes Rashi fun, is that when he doesn't know something, he tells you, "I don't know." All right. If he doesn't understand, he says, "I don't understand." If he has inherited an explanation that doesn't make sense to him, he'll say, "So and so says such and such, and I don't agree." All right? Or sometimes he says, "Eini yodea ma ze milamdenu." Right? I don't understand what this is meant to teach us. He's brutally honest.
And brilliant in the process.
Yeah. But the brilliance, I mean, I'm used to brilliance from our commentators. I'm not necessarily used to honesty from our commentators, right? And that's kind of what I like it. So Rashi has here this long explanation. I'm not even gonna go through it. But I actually, of course, I got this later on. Did you get this?
No. Oh, goodness.
All right. The garments of the Kohen Gadol. Okay. This is allegedly what it looked like. Okay. So the ephod is like this apron. Okay. And the Hoshen is the breastplate with the 12 stones.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also stones on the epaulets, on the shoulder of the breastplate, and under that, me'il ha'ephod, the robe of the ephod, and under that, a tunic. Okay, and the Kohen is barefoot because you don't wear shoes standing on holy ground. Okay. So now let's go down to 28:12. You shall put the 2 stones upon the shoulder straps of the ephod. V'samta et shtei ha'avanim al kitfot ha'ephod avnei zikaron. Stones of memory, memory stones, stones of remembrance, livnei Israel. For the children of Israel, for the Israelites, v'nasa Aharon et shemotam, and Aaron shall carry their names, lifnei Hashem, before the Lord, al shtei kitafav lezikaron, upon his 2 shoulders as remembrance.
What are we remembering?
What are we remembering? That's what Rashi is going to tell you.
Okay.
Luzikaron sheyirei hakadosh baruch hu hashvatim ketuvim lifanav vayiskor tzidkatam. That the Holy One, blessed be he, will see the tribes written before him, and he will remember their righteousness.
That accounts for the 12 stones, but the 2 stones on the shoulder
has the names of the tribe.
It was inscribed.
It was inscribed with the names.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I don't want to be too anthropomorphic, but if God is up there, God is going to see what's on the shoulder more easily than looking down than what's on the breastplate.
Well,
I think that, because I think that there are levels here.
Well, what?
What?
Well, I was reading what the commentary in the Chumash.
Okay, what does it say?
And it says Aaron the high was to carry the names of Israel's tribes on his shoulders, like a father carrying a young child on his shoulders to keep the child safe.
Okay. Did you hear that?
This is from what?
What page was that, Gail?
506.
506, I found it.
506. Okay, so right, so this is the Drash commentary. So this is our friend Harold Kushner. Aaron the high priest was to carry the names of Israel tribes on his shoulders like a father carrying a young child on his shoulders to keep the child safe. Right? I mean, when a father carries the kid, right, the kid is riding on his shoulders often. All right, so that's a nice drash.
And then 9 is explained above that, the technique of miniature engraving on precious, because you're taking the 2 lazuli stones
Right.
and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. That's the 12 tribes.
Right.
And so and this is the technique of miniature engraving. Remember in Spot how they draw pictures, but instead of a line, it's the whole word of the Haftorah that they
Right,
write in.
sure. Yeah, micrography, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Stunning.
Right. But so God is going to look at this and remember the righteousness of the tribes. Now, if you think about it, I mean, this is the whole theology of the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah, right?
Yeah.
Right? You know, I mean, it's why we read the Akedah, it's all the poetry, right? We know we're unworthy, but as unworthy as we are, we have yichus, right? So don't save us for our own sake, save us for the sake of our ancestors, right? And so that's the whole theology here. All right, so now we'll look at 28:15. Shall make a Hoshen of judgment, right? Hoshen mishpat. The work of a master weaver. You shall make it like the work of the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and crimson wool, and twist it fine linen, shall you make it. Okay, so the priest's breastplate is made, and if you look at this picture, it looks, and I had it in color, but I don't have a color copier. All right, it looks very similar. Okay, why is it called Hoshen HaMishpat, the breastplate of judgment? Right now, first of all, I want to add that the Shulchan Aruch, right, the sort of normative law code, and if you have a collection of responsa, or if you have a new code, right, somebody else, because there have been other codes since then, the Mishnah Brura, the Chavod, right? It is arranged according to the same 4 sections as the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, and the section of the Shulchan Aruch, and therefore any collection of responsa or any other code that deals with basically civil law is called Hoshen Mishpat. Okay, it's the same phrase as here. Okay, Hoshen Mishpat. Mishpat means judgment, but it also means justice. Right? In other words, it is the equilibrium, the way God really wants the world to be, right? That the task, I mean, and who ruled Israel between Moses and Joshua and Saul and Solomon and David? The Shoftim, right? The Shoftim's job, the job of the Shofet, is to establish Mishpat, right? And very, very important. Okay, so why is it called the Hoshen Mishpat? Right? Shemechaper al kilkul hadin. it atones for the perversion of justice. Okay, you see that? 28:15. It's a lot of atoning to do right now, right? But again, this is Rashi, right? And going back to the Bible, right? That human beings are supposed to establish mishpat, but we fail in that task, in that assignment, and so we need to atone for our failures to establish justice. Okay.
But that doesn't appear in the Torah, huh?
What?
That part.
No, it's Rashi.
So that's Rashi.
It's Rashi. I mean, if it was in the Torah, it wouldn't have to be in Rashi. I mean, Rashi is explaining to us what's unclear in the Torah, and it does. I mean, it's not. Look, sometimes, right? And I know I've said this before, right? There's two different things in text study. There's exegesis and eisegesis, right? Exegesis is when you are explicating what the text really says. Eisegesis is when you are making the text say what you want it to say. Right? Having said that, what's the difference between exegesis and eisegesis? When you do it, it's exegesis. It's eisegesis. When I do it, it's exegesis.
Exactly.
Right? But still, why is it called Hoshen Mishpat? Right? Why is it called Hoshen Mishpat? It's not obvious from the text. Right? It's not obvious from the text. So one explanation is that it atones for perversion of justice. Another interpretation is referred to as judgment because it clarifies its word and its promise comes true. For the word mishpat has three usages, all right? Three meanings, okay? The word mishpat means the words of the pleas of the litigants. It means the verdict, and it means the punishment, whether the punishment of death, punishment of lashes, or punishment of monetary payment. But this one use of the word mishpat serves an expression of the clarification of words, meaning that it explains and clarifies its words. Okay, so, but that word mishpat, right, meaning both the verdict and the punishment, it just popped into my head. When you have Abraham and God arguing over the fate of Sodom, right? And God says, they're bad, I'm going to wipe out the whole city, right? And Abraham's first response is, Hashofet kol haaretz lo ya'aseh mishpat. Same word, right? Shall the judge, the shofet, but the shofet meaning the mishpat giver, shall the shofet of the whole universe, lo ya'aseh mishpat, not do mishpat, right? It's you invented the whole concept of justice, right? And now you yourself are not going to do it? Chalila lacha, right? God forbid, like literally, God forbid that you should do such a thing, right? And I remember a conversation I had in 2007. Kelly and I were in Israel. We were on the Midrachov, the Ben Yehuda pedestrian mall. And there was a lot of trouble, what's new, between Israel and Gaza. I mean, Hamas was already in charge of Gaza, and they were lobbing rockets and so on and so forth. And there were a bunch of kids. And again, if you know Israel, you can pretty much look at a person based on how they are dressed and if they're wearing kippah, and if they're wearing kippah, what type of kippah. And these were teenagers, and I looked at them immediately, and I said, they're from the settlements. Knew immediately, right? And I was wearing kippah, right? And they asked me to sign a petition that Israel should bomb and flatten Gaza. And I said, I'm not going to sign it. Why not? And I said, Hashofet kol haaretz lo yaseh mishpat, right? The same argument that yes. Are there people in Gaza doing bad things? Absolutely. Should we prevent them from doing bad things? Absolutely. Right? Should we root out their ability to do it? To the extent possible, we should. Does that mean we have to kill 1.5 million people, most of whom are innocent? Absolutely not. It's totally,
What they say.
They were astonished because how can I be wearing a kippah and quoting from the Tanakh and not agree with them? Right? Because in it, right, everybody has their own slot that in which they reside. Okay, so
Anti-tribalist. Wow.
All right. So last thing, the Urim and Tumim.
Uh-oh.
Okay, which are also in the breastplate here.
Uh-huh.
The inscription of the explicit name which he would place within the folds of the Hoshen, through which it would light up its words Me'ir, that's why it's called Urim, Me'ir, light up, and perfect, mitamem, in the English there's typo, mitamem, to make tamim, perfect, its words. In the second temple, there was the Hoshen, because it was impossible for the Kohen Gadol to be missing any of the original garments, but that name was not inside it. Because of that name, it was called judgment, as it is said, he shall inquire for him through the judgment of the Urim. Okay? And nobody's completely clear on what the Urim and Tumim were or how they work, but they were probably like an oracle, right? They lit up. You asked them yes or no questions, and they lit up, okay? Because they carry the judgment of the children of Israel. The Hoshen, a term for the perverters of justice. It was called judgment because of its forgiveness for the sins of judgment. Right? So a lot of emphasis. Right? So even... and I'll just close with this, is that, and again, you've all heard me address this before, right? Is that Judaism is about finding balance, right? And so, is it more important to observe rituals or to do justice? And the answer is both, right? And according to, there's nothing more ritual, right, than the garments of the Kohen Gadol, right? But for Rashi, the garments of the Kohen Gadol are all about concretizing and visualizing and representing justice. It's not just ritual. The ritual is for the purpose of establishing justice.
Cool.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lila Tov.
See you tomorrow.
See you. Good night, Stan. Hope you feel better.
Yeah, I'm getting there. One more pill to go.
Okay, I was actually saying that to Stan, but it goes for you too. Okay. If you want to say something, Stan, you could unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gail, you're covering tomorrow?
Yeah, more or less. Coughing
Right.
a little still, but
I know you're more or less, but are you covering?
yes.
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 All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Good night.
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 Cool.